Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Our fifth wedding anniversary dinner was supposed to be a celebration of everything we'd built together. Instead, my wife had planned to make it the opening scene of her viral breakup prank video. What she didn't know was that I'd heard every single detail of her plan, and I'd already decided exactly how this night would actually end. I had reserved the private dining room at Thompson Manor 3 months in advance. It was the same restaurant where I'd proposed to her 6 years earlier, and I wanted our anniversary to feel special. The room cost a premium, but after 5 years of marriage, I thought we deserved something memorable. I had no idea just how memorable it would become. 3 days before our anniversary, I was working late in my home office. I'm a tech consultant, and client deadlines don't care about personal schedules. My wife was supposed to be asleep, but around 11, I heard voices coming from the living room. The door to my office was slightly ajar, and her voice carried clearly down the hallway along with 3 others. She was on a video call with her friends. I wouldn't normally eavesdrop, but something about the excited, conspiratorial tone made me pause with my hand on the mouse. What I heard in the next 15 minutes changed everything. "So you're definitely doing it Thursday night? At the fancy restaurant?" That was her friend from yoga, the one who was always posting relationship drama online. My wife's voice came through clearly, practically vibrating with excitement. "Yes, he reserved that private room, so it'll be perfect. More intimate, better for filming quality. And he invited his brother and best friend to join us after dinner for drinks, so we'll have the perfect audience for the second part." My blood went cold. Filming quality? Audience. Another voice chimed in, the one I recognized as her co-worker from the boutique. "I'm setting up 3 different angles. My phone and my purse on the table, Ring camera style. The restaurant has that mirror behind your booth, perfect for getting his face. And I'll do a handheld for the reaction shots." A third friend, someone she'd met through social media, added her input with professional precision. "The key is commitment. You can't break character. I've seen these go wrong when the wife starts laughing too soon. You need to cry real tears, make him think you're genuinely unhappy." "I've been practicing in the bathroom mirror," my wife said, and I could hear the pride in her voice. "I can cry on command now. I'm going to say I feel like we've grown apart, that I need to find myself, that I'm not happy anymore." The yoga friend laughed. "And that's when we come in with the support. We'll back you up, say we've noticed you've been unhappy for months. Really sell it." "How long are you going to let him suffer before the reveal?" the coworker asked. My wife's response made my hands clench into fists. "At least 10 minutes. Maybe longer if he really starts begging. Oh my God, what if he cries? That would be perfect content. Husband's raw reaction to wife asking for divorce. That's like guaranteed 10 million views." The social media friend's voice took on a coaching tone. "Make sure you mention the word divorce. That's what makes it hit different. I want a divorce is way more shocking than I want to break up." My wife laughed, actually laughed, at the suggestion. "This is going to be legendary. His face is going to be priceless." I sat frozen in my chair, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. They were planning to film my devastation for entertainment. For views. For content. My wife of 5 years was going to pretend to divorce me at our anniversary dinner, film my reaction from multiple angles, and post it online for millions of strangers to watch. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, covering logistics, camera positions, backup plans if I didn't react the way they wanted. They discussed hashtags. They talked about which platform would get the most engagement. They analyzed successful prank videos and what made them go viral. When the call finally ended, my wife walked past my office on her way to bed. She pushed the door open and smiled at me. That same smile I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. "Still working, babe? Don't stay up too late. Love you." "Love you too," I replied automatically, watching her disappear down the hallway. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the darkness of my office and thought about the woman I'd married, about the vows we'd exchanged, about trust, respect, and what it meant when someone you loved planned to humiliate you for entertainment. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to a divorce attorney's office. I'd found him online, a highly rated family law specialist with excellent reviews. His name was Mr. Patterson, and he'd been practicing for 30 years. "I need to understand my options," I told him after explaining the situation. Hypothetically, Mr. Patterson leaned back in his chair and studied me over his reading glasses. "Son, There's nothing hypothetical about what you're describing. Your wife is planning to emotionally abuse you for social media content. The question isn't whether you have grounds for divorce. The question is whether you're prepared to follow through. I think I am, I said quietly. But I need to know what I'm facing. Assets, timeline, all of it. He walked me through everything. The house was in both our names, but I'd paid the entire down payment and made all the mortgage payments for 5 years. That mattered. Our cars were titled separately. We had a joint checking account and individual savings accounts. Washington was a community property state, which meant equal division of marital assets, but significant separate contributions could affect that calculation. If you're serious about this, Mr. Patterson said, I can have preliminary papers drawn up by tomorrow. You don't have to file them, but having them ready gives you options. Draw them up, I said. I spent the next 2 days acting completely normal. I went to work, came home, had dinner with my wife, watched television beside her on the couch. She was distracted, constantly checking her phone, presumably coordinating with her friends. I said nothing about what I knew. I asked about her day, kissed her goodnight, played the role of the unsuspecting husband perfectly, because that's what she'd turned our marriage into, a performance. And if she wanted a show, I was going to give her one she'd never forget. Thursday evening arrived. I picked up the preliminary divorce papers from Mr. Patterson's office that afternoon and tucked the envelope inside my jacket pocket. Then I went home to get ready for our anniversary dinner. My wife was in the bedroom, applying makeup with unusual care. She'd bought a new dress for the occasion, dark blue with a plunging neckline. She looked beautiful, and I felt a distant pang of sadness for what we could have had if she'd been a different person. You look stunning, I said honestly. She turned and smiled, and for a moment I saw genuine affection in her eyes. Or maybe I just wanted to see it. Thank you, baby. I can't believe it's been 5 years. Neither can I replied, and that was the truest thing I'd said in days. We drove to Thompson Manor in comfortable silence. I'd reserved a car service so we could both drink, a detail she'd appreciated when I told her. What I didn't tell her was that I'd also reserved a room at the Marriott downtown for the next week, and that my brother knew to meet me there after dinner regardless of what happened. Thompson Manor sat on a hill overlooking the city, an old converted mansion with grounds that glowed with string lights as evening fell. The private dining room was on the second floor, intimate and elegant with exposed brick walls, candlelight, and floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city lights below. Her friends were already seated at a table near the windows when we arrived. What a coincidence, my wife said with obviously fake surprise. The girls are here too. Small world. I replied evenly, noting how one of them had positioned her designer handbag on the table at an angle that would perfectly capture our booth. The first hour passed in careful conversation. My wife kept steering the discussion toward memories, talking about how much we'd changed since our wedding day. Do you think we're the same people we were 5 years ago? She asked, right on schedule according to the script I'd overheard. I think I'm getting a clearer picture of who we both really are, I replied calmly. She missed the double meaning entirely, too focused on her performance timeline. I could see her checking her watch periodically, waiting for the main course to arrive. That was her planned moment, the timing they'd rehearsed. Our entrees came at 8:30. Filet mignon for me, Chilean sea bass for her, and 2 glasses of expensive Cabernet. The server had barely left when my wife took a deep breath, and I knew it was time. I need to tell you something, she said, and right on cue. Tears began forming in her eyes. That bathroom mirror practice had paid off. I've been thinking about this for months, and I can't keep pretending anymore. I set down my fork and gave her my full attention. Okay, I'm listening. I'm not happy. Her voice broke perfectly, exactly as she'd planned. I haven't been happy for a long time. We've grown apart. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore in this marriage. I need space to find myself. I nodded slowly, as if processing shocking information. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see her friends leaning forward at their table, phones positioned. The stage was set. The cameras were rolling. Everyone was in position. Everyone except me. I think, she continued, voice trembling, I think I want a divorce. The silence that followed was supposed to be filled with my shock, my pleading, my desperate attempts to understand what had gone wrong. Instead, I calmly dabbed my mouth with my napkin and met her eyes. I understand, I said evenly. Thank you for being honest about your feelings. Her expression faltered. This wasn't the script. What? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say? You've clearly thought this through. You said you've been unhappy for months. I respect your decision. But don't you want to talk about this? Real panic was creeping into her voice now, replacing the rehearsed emotion. Try to work things out. You just said you want a divorce. That seems pretty definitive. I'm not going to force someone to stay married to me who doesn't want to be married. Right on cue, her yoga friend appeared at our table, concern painted across her face. Sweetie, are you okay? We could hear raised voices. I looked at her with polite confusion. There were no raised voices. She just asked for a divorce, and I'm accepting her request. The co-worker joined the intervention. But you guys have been together 5 years. You're just giving up without a fight? I turned my attention to her, genuinely curious about their logic. What exactly would you like me to fight for? She said she's unhappy and wants a divorce. Fighting that would be what? Refusing to sign papers? Begging her to stay in a marriage she doesn't want? That's not love, that's hostage-taking. The social media friend tried next. Every marriage has rough patches. You should at least try counseling. I looked directly at my wife. Did you want to try counseling? Because the way you phrased it, I want a divorce, that didn't sound like someone open to counseling. That sounded like a decision already made. My wife stammered. I mean, maybe we could. Let me ask you something. I interrupted, keeping my voice level. When you were practicing those tears in the bathroom mirror, did you practice the reconciliation speech too? Or were you planning to improvise that part? Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Around us, other diners were now openly watching our table. Because I'm curious, I continued. What was the plan after I begged? Was I supposed to promise expensive gifts? A vacation? Public declarations of love on social media? What exactly was the price for you to graciously forgive me for whatever imaginary crimes justified this performance? The yoga friend stepped forward aggressively. You're being cruel. She's clearly upset. She's upset that I'm not following the script, I said, looking directly at her. Tell me, were you planning to post this under your account or hers? What was the caption going to be? Watch husband's emotional breakdown. Testing my man's love? Which hashtags were you going to use? The friend's face flushed red. We were just trying to help her feel more secure in the relationship. By destroying it. I leaned back in my chair, genuinely fascinated by their logic. By teaching her that manipulation and public humiliation are acceptable relationship tools? That's your definition of security? My wife found her voice again, desperate now. You're twisting everything. It wasn't supposed to be malicious. Then what was it supposed to be? I asked. Educational? Entertainment? Enlightening? Help me understand what purpose is served by making your husband think his marriage is ending while 3 cameras film his reaction. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. Actually, since you've been thinking about this for months, as you said, I imagine you've thought about the logistics. We should probably discuss the practical matters. Right now? Her face had gone pale. Well, you chose to do this at our anniversary dinner in a public place, so I assume you wanted to handle it immediately. I scrolled through my notes. Let's see. The house is in both our names, but I paid the down payment and make all the mortgage payments. My attorney said that would matter in the division. Complete silence fell over our section of the restaurant. Even the ambient music seemed to fade. Your attorney? My wife whispered. I met her eyes calmly. Of course. When your spouse tells you they want a divorce, the responsible thing is to consult an attorney about protecting your assets and understanding your rights. Her friend tried to recover. When did you even have time to? 3 days ago. Wednesday afternoon, to be exact. I paused, letting the timeline sink in. Right after I overheard your video call where you planned this entire thing. The color drained completely from my wife's face. Her friends froze like someone had paused a video. Even the surrounding tables had gone quiet, other diners sensing drama. You knew? My wife's voice was barely a whisper. Every single detail. I continued conversationally. The 3 camera angles. The 10-minute minimum before revealing the prank. The hope that I'd cry for better content. The guaranteed 10 million views you were expecting. Oh, and my personal favorite, the bathroom mirror practice sessions for the tears. I turned to address her friends directly. By the way, how many takes did she need to get the crying just right? Was it method acting, or did she use onions? The co-worker's face crumbled. We didn't mean for it to. To what? To hurt me? To humiliate me? I shook my head slowly. No, you absolutely meant for it to hurt me. That was the entire point. You just didn't mean for me to know about it beforehand. You didn't mean for there to be consequences. I looked at each of them in turn. Here's what's interesting about all of this. You spent days planning how to break me down. You strategized about camera angles and hashtags and viral potential. You coached my wife on her performance. You were so focused on the content you'd create that you forgot something crucial. What's that? The yoga friend asked weakly. You forgot that I'm a person with self-respect, not a character in your social media storyline. You forgot that some people value their dignity more than they fear being alone. Every single detail. I continued conversationally. The 3 camera angles. The 10-minute minimum before revealing the prank. The hope that I'd cry for better content. The guaranteed 10 million views you were expecting. One of her friends tried to hide her phone, but it was far too late. I'd seen exactly where all the cameras were positioned. You can turn off the cameras now, I said, addressing them directly. This isn't going to be the viral moment you planned. Unless, of course, you want to post a video about how a divorce prank became an actual divorce filing. The coworker found her voice. It was just supposed to be funny. I cut her off, my voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze water. Filming your husband's pain for entertainment is funny? Making him think his marriage is ending on your anniversary is funny? Planning to watch him beg and cry is funny? My wife reached for my hand, real tears streaming down her face now. Baby, please, it was just a stupid prank. I wasn't actually going to. Going to what? Divorce me? I pulled my hand away gently but firmly. You're right. You weren't. But I am. I stood up and pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket. The preliminary divorce papers that Mr. Patterson had prepared landed on the table between us with a soft thud that might as well have been a gunshot. I had these drawn up yesterday, I said quietly. I was going to decide tonight whether to file them. Thank you for making that decision easy. My wife stared at the envelope like it was a live snake. You can't be serious. This is insane. It was just a prank. And this is just a consequence. I placed my napkin beside my untouched plate. You wanted to see what I'd do when faced with divorce. Now you get to experience it for real. That's when my brother and best friend arrived, right on schedule for the after-dinner drinks portion of the evening. They walked into the private dining room and immediately stopped, reading the tension in the air. What's going on? My brother asked carefully. She just asked me for a divorce, I said calmly. I'm granting her request. We were just discussing terms. My wife turned to them desperately. It was supposed to be a prank. For TikTok. I didn't mean it. My best friend looked at her friends with their phones, at the tears streaming down my wife's face, at the envelope on the table. Understanding dawned on his face, followed quickly by disgust. You were going to film this? The yoga friend tried to defend their plan. People do this kind of thing all the time online. That's psychotic, my brother said flatly. I addressed my wife one final time. I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown for the next week. My attorney will contact you Monday to discuss asset division and timeline. You're welcome to stay in the house until we sell it. She grabbed my arm as I moved to leave. Please don't do this. I'm so sorry. It was so stupid. I'll never. I gently removed her hand from my sleeve. You're right. You'll never get the chance to do anything like this again. Not to me. What about our marriage? Our vows? For better or worse? I looked at her, really looked at her, probably for the last time with any feeling other than pity. The vows include love and honor. You didn't honor me when you planned to humiliate me publicly. You didn't love me when you hoped I'd cry for your content. The worst you created isn't something I'm obligated to endure. But people make mistakes, she cried out, loud enough that the entire restaurant could hear. Everyone deserves a second chance. Mistakes are accidents, I said quietly. Spilling coffee is a mistake. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Spending days planning to emotionally devastate your spouse, recruiting friends to help, practicing your performance in the mirror, and setting up multiple cameras to capture every moment of his pain. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. A series of choices, actually. And each one showed me exactly who you are. The yoga friend made one last desperate attempt. You're going to regret this. You're going to realize you threw away a good woman over one bad decision. I turned to look at her fully. A good woman doesn't treat her husband like a puppet in a performance. A good woman doesn't monetize his pain. A good woman doesn't practice crying to make his suffering more believable. And honestly, the fact that you think this was one bad decision instead of a fundamental character flaw tells me everything I need to know about why you're her friend. I turned to my brother and best friend. Ready to go? They nodded, flanking me as we walked toward the exit. My best friend put a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, man. Don't be, I replied. I'd rather find out now than after 10 years. As we left Thompson Manor, I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear my wife breaking down in genuine tears, her friends frantically trying to comfort her, other diners whispering about what they'd witnessed. The carefully planned viral moment had imploded spectacularly, and all the cameras in the world couldn't edit it into anything other than what it was, a cruel plan that backfired completely. The first night at the Marriott was strange. I'd been sleeping in the same bed as my wife for 5 years, and suddenly I was alone in a sterile hotel room with industrial carpeting and art that came from a catalog. But as I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone as it exploded with messages I had no intention of reading, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The messages came in waves. My wife, cycling through every stage of grief and manipulation in text form. Her friends, trying to minimize what they'd done. Mutual acquaintances who'd heard what happened, some offering support, others fishing for gossip. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb and went to sleep. Sunday morning brought my wife to the hotel lobby. My brother intercepted her before she could get my room number from the desk. He doesn't want to talk, my brother told me later, after escorting her out. She was a mess, crying, begging for just 5 minutes. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered she practiced crying in a mirror to make your pain more convincing. Monday, my attorney sent the formal filing papers to the house. My wife responded with 47 text messages alternating between apologizing and blaming her friends. I forwarded them all to Mr. Patterson without responding. Tuesday brought a call from my mother-in-law. I answered because I'd always liked her, and she didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. She made a terrible mistake, my mother-in-law said carefully. But divorce? That seems so extreme. She planned to humiliate me publicly, film it, and post it for millions of people. What part of that says I value and respect my husband? There was a long pause. Marriage is about forgiveness. Forgiveness requires genuine remorse and changed behavior. She's sorry she got caught, not sorry about what she planned to do. She says you're being vindictive, that you embarrassed her in front of everyone at that restaurant. I felt a flash of anger for the first time since this started. I embarrassed her. She planned the entire evening around embarrassing me. She invited an audience. She set up cameras. She practiced fake tears. I simply refused to play the role she'd written for me. If the truth embarrassed her, maybe she should have considered that before orchestrating public emotional abuse. That's a harsh way to put it. What would you call it? She was going to make me think our marriage was ending, film my devastation from 3 different angles, and post it online for entertainment. What's the kind word for that? My mother-in-law was quiet for a long moment. When you put it that way, I suppose I understand. I'm sorry it ended this way. So am I said honestly. But it ended the moment she chose views over vows. Wednesday, my wife emptied our joint checking account. $12,000 gone. I called Mr. Patterson immediately. Actually, he said, sounding almost pleased, this works in our favor. Shows financial misconduct during separation. Document everything. Thursday brought a 15-page handwritten letter from my wife, delivered to my office. It detailed her journey and growth over the past week, her realizations about toxic friendship and social media culture, her commitment to becoming a better person. It was eloquent and desperate and completely irrelevant. I forwarded a photo of it to my attorney and threw the original away. Friday, she showed up at my office. Security called up from the lobby. Your wife is here. Should I send her up? I looked out my window and saw her standing by the security desk, looking small and broken. I felt a twinge of something that might have been sadness, but it passed quickly. No, tell her I'll communicate through my attorney. I watched from my window as security escorted her out. She looked up at the building as she left, as if she could sense me watching. I stepped back from the window and returned to work. The next few weeks brought an avalanche of social media drama. Her friends posted their version of events, painting me as cruel and unforgiving. The comments section became a battleground, with most people siding against them once the full story emerged. Playing with someone's emotions isn't a prank, it's abuse, one top comment read. He dodged a bullet. Imagine being married to someone who'd do this, said another. The fact that she practiced crying is genuinely disturbing. Within days, my wife deleted all her social media accounts. Her friend group fractured. The yoga friend got dumped by her own boyfriend after he heard what they'd planned. The coworker faced backlash at work. The social media friend moved her accounts to private and lost thousands of followers. Mutual friends took sides. Most sided with me after hearing the full story. A few tried to remain neutral, but eventually distanced themselves from both of us. Our social circle, built over 5 years of marriage, disintegrated in a matter of weeks. 2 months after that anniversary dinner, I sat across from my wife in a mediator's office. It was the first time I'd seen her in person since walking out of Thompson Manor. She'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked genuinely devastated, and part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. I don't want to divide assets, she said immediately. I want to save our marriage. I looked at her calmly. There is no marriage to save. You killed it the moment you decided I was a prop in your content creation. I've changed. I'm in therapy. I've cut off all those friends. I've deleted everything online. What more do you want? I don't want anything from you except my freedom. You changed because you got caught and faced consequences. That's not growth, that's damage control. Her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, interjected. My client is willing to accept a very favorable division. She wants nothing from the house, will waive spousal support. I'm not interested in negotiating. I cut her off. Standard 50-50 division of marital assets. I'm not trying to punish her financially. I just want this done. My wife broke down. How can you be so cold? After everything we had. Everything we had ended when you looked in that mirror practicing fake tears. That's when I realized the person I married was gone, or maybe never existed. So that's it. 5 years means nothing? I leaned forward, making sure she heard every word. 5 years meant everything. That's why what you did was unforgivable. You knew me well enough to know exactly how to hurt me, and you did it anyway for entertainment. She wiped her eyes, mascara running down her cheeks. I was insecure. My friends said you were taking me for granted, that you didn't appreciate me anymore. They said I needed to shake things up, remind you what you could lose. So instead of talking to me like an adult, I interrupted. Instead of saying, hey, I need more attention, or I'm feeling undervalued, you decided to emotionally destroy me in front of an audience? That was your communication strategy? I know it was wrong. Do you? Because every excuse you just gave me blamed your friends or your insecurity. Not once have you said, I chose to do something cruel. Not once have you taken actual responsibility. Her attorney cleared her throat. Perhaps we should focus on the practical matters. No, my wife said desperately, ignoring her attorney. Please, just tell me what I can do. What would it take for you to forgive me? I sat back and considered the question seriously. You want to know what it would take? It would take me forgetting what I heard. It would take me unlearning that you practiced crying in a mirror to make my pain more convincing. It would take me erasing the memory of you laughing about hoping I'd cry for better content. It would take me becoming someone who values being loved less than I value being respected. I looked at her directly. And I can't do any of those things. Because I heard what I heard. I know what I know. And I'm not that person who accepts disrespect wrapped in apologies. The mediation ended with basic terms agreed upon. I'd keep the house and buy out her equity. We'd split other assets down the middle. The whole thing would be finalized in 6 months. Outside the mediator's office, she stopped me one last time. Can I ask you something? I paused. What? Did you ever love me? Because you stopped so easily. I looked at her, this woman I'd promised forever to, and gave her the truth. I loved you more than anything. That's why I can't forgive this. If I loved you less, I might have been able to overlook it. But I loved you enough to expect better. And I loved myself enough not to accept less. She started crying again. I wish I could go back. I wish I'd never listened to them. They didn't force you. They suggested, and you chose. You chose entertainment over respect. Views over values. Content over character. That's who you are. I just finally saw it clearly. I'm not that person anymore. Maybe not. But I'll never know for sure, will I? Because I'll always wonder if the only reason you changed was getting caught. And that's no foundation for a marriage. She grabbed my sleeve one more time. What if it had been reversed? What if I'd forgiven you for something like this? I gently pulled away. If I'd done something like this to you, I wouldn't want you to forgive me, because it would mean you valued being in a relationship more than you valued yourself. And I loved you too much to want that for you. That doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense. Real love means wanting the other person to have standards, even when those standards exclude you. Real love means supporting their self-respect, even when it costs you everything. You wanted me to prove my love by accepting disrespect. I'm proving my love by refusing to let either of us settle for that. I walked away. This time, I knew it was the last time. A year later, my life looked completely different. I'd been promoted at work, started a side consulting business, and begun speaking at industry conferences. The energy I'd been pouring into a failing marriage got redirected into building something that actually valued what I brought to it. I went to therapy to process the betrayal and rebuild my ability to trust. I grew closer to my family. I built a new friend group, carefully vetted and drama-free. Eventually, I started dating again. I met someone through work, a project manager named Catherine who was brilliant, funny, and refreshingly direct. When I finally told her the story of my marriage, her response told me everything I needed to know. "I can't imagine doing that to someone I loved," she said simply. "That's not a prank. That's torture." Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that my ex-wife had moved to a different city, unable to face the social consequences of what she'd done. She was still in therapy, by all accounts genuinely working on herself. She never remarried. Supposedly, she told the story as a cautionary tale about social media toxicity and the price of valuing validation over genuine connection. Her friends scattered. The yoga friend became known in our old social circle as toxic, someone to avoid. The coworker lost multiple friendships. The social media friend moved away and started over. Their group completely dissolved. People sometimes ask if I ever regretted divorcing her so quickly, if I ever wondered if I overreacted. The answer is no, not once. Because here's what I learned that night at Thompson Manor. When someone shows you who they really are through their cruelest moment, believe them. She showed me that our marriage was performance material, that my pain was potential content, that my dignity was negotiable for internet validation. I showed her that my self-respect was non-negotiable. She wanted to test me, to see if I'd fight for her, beg for her, prove my love through desperation. What she discovered instead was something more important. I'd fight for myself before I'd fight for someone who'd betray me. The prank was supposed to last 10 minutes. The consequence lasted forever. And somewhere in that equation is the clearest lesson I've ever learned about respect, boundaries, and knowing when to walk away. Our 5th anniversary dinner did turn out to be memorable, just not the way she planned. It became the night I remembered who I was. Someone who wouldn't accept cruelty disguised as humor, manipulation disguised as content, or disrespect disguised as love. She wished she'd never started it. I'm grateful she did, because it showed me the truth before we wasted another 5 years. And truth, however painful, is always worth more than comfortable lies. The cameras caught everything that night. But the only view that mattered was the one I gained. Perfect clarity about what I deserved, and the strength to walk away from anything less. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming someone who would never accept what you once tolerated. And that's exactly who I became.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.